this video, I'm going to show you how to do 5 things. How to engage people with your presentations in ways that make things happen. How to use stories and storytelling to create a really powerful and personal narrative running through the entire presentation. How to use this idea of role models in order to not only deal with that fear of failure that you might have, but also, more importantly, access those deeply rooted resources that you actually already have, but may not realize that you do. The 4th thing is all about a golden thread, creating this powerful, clear and focused narrative that runs through the entire presentation. And finally, the 5th thing, well, that's all about speaking without notes, which is actually a lot more easy than you might think. Now, what you will have noticed is that 5 tabs have just appeared beneath me here. Now, you can use those tabs to click on and navigate your way directly to each part of the workshop if that's what you want to do. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the workshop. In this video, I want to share with you some of the insights that I've discovered during my time as a keynote speaker and storyteller. In my work, which blends the science of human behaviour and the art of stories and storytelling, I've come to believe that we human beings all already possess within us and around us all of the resources we require to achieve whatever it is we want for ourselves in our lives. So that means that we all already have within us the resources we need to be a great presenter. And the only difference between those that already are and those that aren't is that these people, they know how to access those resources. That's what it's about. It's about being able to access the resources you require in pursuit of what it is you want to achieve. So what I'm going to do with you is share 5 golden nuggets. Now, I know this isn't really a golden nugget, it's a foam brain, but you know what I mean. Now, here are the 5 golden nuggets that we're going to go through. The first one is make things happen. Now, that's all about being outcome focused. The second is tell a story. Use the power and flow of storytelling. The third is role model. How to use role modeling in order to be able to really quickly access those resources that you require. The 4th is golden thread, the importance of having a golden thread flowing through your entire presentation. And finally, speak without notes. A really simple tool, actually, whether it's a 10-minute, 15-minute or 30-minute presentation, for being able to speak without having to constantly refer to your notes. So, let's have a look at the first golden nuggets. This one is called Make Things Happen, and it's about being outcome focused. Now, the key thing here is, how do you define great communication? Now, most people think about communication as being all about what you say, your script, your words, your PowerPoint presentation. But it's not. That doesn't define great communication. Great communication is defined by what people hear and what they believe. And even more importantly than that, great communication is defined by what people actually do as a result of hearing and believing you. And there's a process that I've developed that I call the golden sequence that helps us and better enables us to be able to make sure that we focus on what it is we want people to do as a result of hearing us speak. And there are 3 words that sum up the golden sequence. They are engage, align, and elicit. Now, the most important thing, if you want somebody to do something, believe something, is to engage them with where they are at, what matters to them, why they're in this meeting room, what they believe in, what their values are. Once you've engaged them at that place, you then create an alignment with where you are at, with what the purpose of this meeting is, what the purpose of this presentation is. And having created that sense of alignment, that kind of sense of shared purpose, that is when you are able to elicit the kind of behaviours. Now the trouble is, most people start here. They go straight into that elicit phase, thinking, I've got to try and get people to do things. Spend time in this phase. Typically, I would spend 30 to 40% of my time in the engage and the align phase before moving into the elicit phase. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. A lovely story that brings that to life is the story of Ernest Shackleton and the endurance. What he was able to do, he was able to engage his men with the thing that really mattered to all of them, and that was their ability to be able to survive for what turned out to be 2 years on an ice pack floating in the Southern Ocean. He was able to create an incredible alignment between all of the men. He famously said, either we all get out of here or none of us does. And as a result of doing that, he was able to elicit some incredible behaviours and incredible achievements from all of the men. And all of the men on that expedition arrived safely back in Buenos Aires after those 2 years out in the Southern Ocean. An incredible achievement, incredible example of this process of the golden sequence in operation. The second golden nugget is tell a story. Use the power of stories and storytelling. It's the oldest form of communication known to man and the most powerful. Stories kept us safe on the savannah. They showed us where food was, where water was, where danger was. They kept our tribe's identity alive through hundreds of generations. And we still use stories today in just the same way. Now, when you look at stories, as I do, not just as billions of stories that we've all shared with each other, but as billions of pieces of anecdotal research, you then discover that there's a pattern. There's a kind of a secret code hidden in each story of just how it is that people go from can't to can, from not having to having, from ordinary to extraordinary. And it's a very, very simple code. I call it the story arc. Think about it in this way. Think about a story now that you really like of human achievement. Okay? Now that story will have a hero. That hero will have a quest. There'll be something that they're seeking to achieve. Now on the way to achieving that quest, they will face a range of different challenges. And as a result of going through those challenges on the way to their quest, they grow. Now this is the secret code, if you like. The 4-part story arc that tends to be present in every piece of research that shows how we human beings have gone from not having to having. And as a way of creating a narrative for a presentation, certainly it's something that I use in all of my work, it's incredibly powerful. And the lovely thing about it is, if you think about it this way, the hero in every story, their role is to help others be the best that they can be. They're possessed of all of the resources that they require in order to be able to achieve their quest. And they're really clear about their quest. They know exactly what it is they want to achieve. Now along the way toward that, they face inevitably challenges. But for a hero, they don't want just a small little challenge. Like the classic hero doesn't want some little smoke-breathing baby dragon. They want a fire-breathing, horny-headed dragon, because they know that the bigger the challenge, the bigger the quest, then the more fit for purpose they're going to be. Usain Bolt, he doesn't just drag a tiny little push-bike tyre behind him. He drags a great big tractor tyre because he knows that the bigger that challenge is, then the faster he is going to run. Our attitude toward challenges is what affects the outcome of the challenge, not the challenge itself. And finally, grow. As a result of going through these challenges on the way to achieving our goal, we grow. Especially when we look on every experience that happens to us as an opportunity to grow. Everything that happens to me happens to benefit me. Now that can be quite difficult to say and believe when something really major is happening to you. But as soon as you start to think in that way, you start to look at these events of life very differently. You start to get very curious about what is it inside of this experience that is there to benefit me, and that changes the way you look at the experience that you're going through. So much in this this simple narrative, and I just touched obviously on the tiniest bit of it. A lovely example of quest, actually having that real clarity of purpose, is a story that I tell of Elon Musk, an incredible innovator, entrepreneur. One of his goals, one of his real quests, is to make life multi-planetary. And the first step on that is to put life on Mars. Now, when he was being interviewed about this, the interviewer said, "So tell me about this. What is that? What's that all about?" And Elon Musk said, "Well, I see it like this. I see a lander arriving on Mars and opening up, and there is this greenhouse, and in it is this food, this plant food, and this little seed. And upon landing, the nutrients are flooded into the soil, and these cameras that are positioned on this greenhouse, they start to film this tiny little green shoot appearing with the red backdrop of Mars behind it." Now the interviewer, when she heard this, was clearly amazed. She went, "Wow, do you really see it with that kind of clarity?" And without any sense of irony or mischief, Elon Musk just said, "Well, yeah, you've got to have the money shot." Now what he meant from that is he had a real clarity of purpose, because he knew that if he had that clarity, he could work back from there in order to be able to achieve the goals that he set himself, and indeed inspire everybody else along the way. So as I said, so much in the whole idea of the story arc, and using stories and storytelling to support your presentation. Now this third one is really interesting, role modelling. When we were kids, really young kids, we were at our most potent in terms of learning. Why? Because we spent all of our time looking at our parents, looking at our siblings, looking at people around us, and copying them. That's what we did. That's how we learn. We're incredibly good at being able to assimilate through all sorts of channels what we see in the world around us, how it works, and then putting it into practice. Now, the trouble is, when we start getting into formal education, we kind of forget this innate learning pattern, this innate learning process. So we start learning by rote, and we start learning according to externalized models. And that blocks us from what we're naturally already really good at. So role modeling is about identifying who is it that is already really, really good at the thing that you want to achieve, and copying them. A lovely example that brings this to life was some work that I was doing with Google, with a senior presentations team, and there was this one lady there who had an incredibly quick mind, and as a consequence she spoke really, really quickly. She didn't slow down. Nobody could really understand what she was saying, although she thought that everyone could really understand what she was saying, and neither could she put any kind of nuance or subtlety into her presentation whatsoever, nor hardly draw breath. Now, try as I might, I tried all these external techniques to slow her down, but it wasn't working. So I asked the others just to give us 5 minutes, because I knew that what I needed to do was access some of those resources that I knew she already had inside her, but she didn't believe that she did. So I was looking for a role model. To cut a long story short, we ended up at school days, kindergarten, on a Friday afternoon. And Friday afternoon was when they had stories. It was story time. And she used to love this teacher who would tell the stories on a Friday afternoon, and she described how she would sat there on her mat completely rapt with attention on this teacher, and friends around her, some of whom would be sleeping, some would be watching the story. And as she told this story, I could tell that she was getting a little bit emotional as she recalled it. And I said, "You can really see your teacher there now, can't you?" And she said, "Yes, I can." And I got her to describe what she was wearing, what she looked like, what her voice sounded like. And I said to her, "What would it be like for you to go and stand in the shoes of your kindergarten teacher and do your presentation from there?" Now, at first, because she was quite emotional by this point, she was a little bit reticent. And then she said, "Yeah, okay, I'd like to experience that." So I said, "Okay, you go over there, get yourself ready. And when you tell me you're ready, I'll get the others in and you can do your presentation." And she did that. The presentation she gave was so beautifully modulated, so paced. Her focus was on each and every one of the people in her audience to make sure that they were getting the point of her story. At the end of it, she got this tremendous round of applause. Everyone else thought that I'd hypnotized her or something. But here was the kicker. I said to her, how was that for you? And she said, "Wow, it was just amazing." I said, "What did it feel to be able to do that?" To which she said, "Well, it wasn't really me, was it? It was my kindergarten teacher." And I replied, "Really? I didn't see her come in. I didn't see her go out." And it was then she realised that actually she already had all of those resources inside her, and she was just using the role model of her kindergarten teacher to stimulate them into life. It's an incredibly powerful tool. Why? Because it's a fundamental truth about how we human beings really work. So, the fourth golden nugget. That's all about having a golden thread that runs through your entire presentation. Now, why is that important? That's important because we human beings, in essence, are pattern-making machines. We make patterns out of everything. And if we're in front of a presentation that's scattergun and all over here, we've got so many patterns going on in our head, we're not really sure what's going on. But if there's a real clarity, a real golden thread running through the piece, now we can take everything that we're being shared and just lock it into that pattern. It's rather like a thesis, putting out an argument and drawing in all of the relevant data to support that thesis, or a barrister giving his closing arguments. Everything comes into why this person is either guilty or not guilty. It's as simple as that. And throughout this entire piece, I've been using a golden thread. It's called a golden nugget in this case, that was deliberately chosen to be a brain, because a lot of what I'm talking about is the truths of how we human beings actually really work. So that gives a real simplicity and a real focus to all of the messaging that I'm putting across. So the use of metaphors is incredibly powerful and incredibly potent. And the other advantage of using a metaphor, of course, is it means that I'm not being absolutely prescriptive here. I'm suggesting that there's golden nuggets which are linked to the way in which we work as human beings, and I'm leaving you to make your own specific details around that, so you own, if you like, the interpretation of this model, and that better enables you to be able to assimilate in your own way the messages that I'm sharing with you. Finally, speaking without notes. Now, most of us are scared of speaking, principally, partly because it's standing up in front of people, but also, how on earth am I going to remember all of this stuff? Well, there's a really simple and powerful technique. I call it a scriptograph. Sounds fancy. Basically, it means turn your script into pictures. And the reason I do that is because of the way in which we human beings process information. We have specific parts of the brain that are responsible for processing specific types of information that come in. So here's some visual stuff that goes into a certain part of my brain. Here's some auditory stuff, certain part of my brain. Here's some oral stuff, some written stuff, all being processed in different parts of my brain. Now, if I can start to use, or hypothecate is the fancy word, multiple parts of my brain in pursuit of a single purpose, i.e. remembering a script, then I'm much more likely to be able to do it. And so, let me give you a live example. The pictograph that I put together for this has been just down here, and I've been taking a little glance at it from time to time, which looks very complex, but to me it's very simple because I created it. And here is the introduction. Here is first golden nugget, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And the idea here, of course, is this is like the third iteration, the third time I've drawn this out. So not only am I processing using the visual part of my brain, but the repeated doing of this and the perfecting of the rather amateurish drawings is another aid to learning. So rather than just spending time going over the lines, line by line, word by word, trying to cram them into your head, using different parts of your brain to process different types of information works incredibly effective. So there are just a few of the insights that come out of my work, blending the science of human behaviour and the art of stories and storytelling. It's such a fascinating field that's really dramatically emerged over literally just the last 20 years or so. In fact, I'm going to be spending much of 2017 consolidating all of these ideas, writing and making films, creating podcasts, in order to be able to share these insights more broadly than just as a keynote speaker in conferences. But as a result of that, what I'm doing is I'm limiting the number of speaking engagements that I do in 2017 to just 3 a month. And the first 2 bookings in any one month, I'm going to discount by 40% in order to encourage people to, if they're interested in my work, to book me as early as possible, because that allows me to be able to schedule my time. And in addition to that, what I'll also do is I'll add in a final face-to-face meeting, because typically what I do is I have an initial face-to-face meeting with you to understand the nuances of what it is you're seeking to achieve, and then lots of Skypes, as much communication as you want in between. And then for clients that ask for a final face-to-face meeting, typically I would charge for that, but in this case I won't. So if you'd like to take advantage of any of that, the additional meeting and the 40% discount for the first 2 bookings in any given month, then simply reply to this email and I'll get back to you. And it would be a real pleasure to meet you face to face and help you and your entire team and organization enjoy discovering, based on the truths of how we really work as human beings, just how extraordinary we actually already are. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that, found it interesting, and more importantly, found it useful. If you want to get in touch, there's a link that's appeared at the top of the screen. If you click on that, it'll take you through to the website from which you can get in touch with me, or of course simply reply to the email. And as I said in the workshop, it would be lovely to have the opportunity at some point to meet with you face to face. Take care. Thank you very much.